I have cancer, George. Raymond and his son George Cross were sitting in the presbytery kitchen of their friend Stephen, who also happened to be a Catholic parish priest. George didn't react at all to this information initially. Then, I see. Where? Asked George. It's in my lung. Has it spread? Not as far as we know, replied his father. What's the prognosis? George continued, flatly. Difficult to say, but they're fairly optimistic it's the kind of cancer that is operable and can normally be got out cleanly. A carcinoid. If that happens, then I should be clear, Raymond said, as positively as he could frame it. George made a note of this. He then glanced around Stephen's kitchen. Why have we come here for you to tell me this? He asked. In case you want to talk, Stephen replied. With whom? George asked. Me, the priest replied. You're not an oncologist, Cross pointed out. Stephen smiled. I am not, he agreed. Then I don't know exactly what we would talk about in this situation. Your feelings, perhaps? Replied the priest. Cross ignored this and turned back to his father. What are the next steps in your treatment? He asked. Surgery. Nothing else? No, I'm very lucky. Like I said, it's a carcinoid and completely operable. I'll be cancer-free afterwards, with no need for chemo, hopefully. But not definitely. No. When is your next appointment with the oncologist? The week before the op. Which is when? 6 weeks. No, that won't do. We'll need an appointment this week, Cross insisted. What for? Because I have some questions, and I think speaking to a consultant oncologist will be of more value to me than a Catholic priest. Now you're just being rude, son, replied Raymond. George knew that his father only referred to him as son when he was upset with him. It's not my intention to be rude, just practical. Is that everything? He asked. I'll call the surgeon, said Raymond. What's his name? Asked George. Mr. Moseby. George made a note of this, got up and left, partly because he didn't want to cause any further inadvertent offence to anyone, but also because he wanted to get home and start researching carcinoids, together with this Mr. Moseby. He needed to be armed with as much information as possible before he met his father's consultant. I'm sorry, Father, Raymond said, as the kitchen door closed behind his son. Nonsense. He's upset. He just doesn't know it yet, replied the priest, causing Raymond to smile at how well Stephen knew his son. As George cycled away from the church, he wasn't feeling at all upset. Concerned, yes. Surprised, no. His father had as much as told him something was amiss the week before. His father never lied to him. So he was certain that if the diagnosis was terminal, his father would have just come out and said so. He thought he was right about this, or, if not, that he wasn't as au fait with how most parents function when it came to protecting their children from unpleasant news. George had to meet the surgeon, because if it came to his father's having to make any choices of a medical nature, he wanted to be involved. He was also aware that this was something one should do for a parent of advancing years. He would attempt to be helpful, rather than overbearing. But even as he thought of this, he knew the likelihood of it happening wasn't perhaps as great as it ideally should have been. When he arrived home, he got straight onto his computer with the enthusiasm of an amateur genealogist who had just received an alert from Ancestry.com that a distant relative from some far-flung, distant continent wanted to get in touch. He began researching carcinoid tumours for much longer than he intended. It was only the sound of the urban dawn chorus, bin men doing their weekly collection, and the build-up of traffic that alerted him to the fact that he had just disappeared down an internet wormhole of research that was 8 hours deep.